Everyone has a story to tell. Welcome to DingoTalk, where we explore the experiences that make us who we are. Here's your host, Carlo Guadagnino.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? Welcome back to DingoTalk. I am Carlo Guadagnino. This week, we are sitting down with USA South Conference member Belhaven University's head football coach, Blaine McCorkle. Coach McCorkle is going to talk to us about playing at LSU, that atmosphere, and then his journey throughout the college coaching circuit before finding his way to Belhaven. This 2023 team's pretty special. Right now, they're 8-1. They have an opportunity this week to go 9-1, which would be the best record in school history. It would also be the first time that they won the conference outright. Gets them the automatic bid. So there's a lot on the line, which is why we have them on the show this week, and we're really happy to do that. Don't forget that after the show we do overtime with Serenity. The picks have not gone our way lately, but I think that this is the week. I think this is the week where she turns the corner. We're heading into the playoffs. So also, if you're listening to us on Spotify or watching us on Spotify, listening to us and watching us on YouTube, we really appreciate you. Tell a friend to tell a friend. And please make sure you check out the social medias. It's Instagram, TikTok, X, or Twitter, and Facebook. The only one that's different is the Instagram page. It's Dingo_talk. And please, if you can and are able, check out our GoFundMe page. We're running a 30-day donation campaign here. So we're still doing that, and we really appreciate every donation that comes in. Without further ado, this is Blaine McCorkle. What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is Dingo Talk. My guest this week is the head football coach at Belhaven University, Blaine McCorkle. Coach, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Carlos. Good to be with you.
Well, you're our second guy from the South, and I'm excited for this because we were talking before the camera went on. When we think of football, it's Florida, it's the South, the SEC, you got Texas, but not as big in Division III for the school-wise. So that's definitely something we're going to want to talk to you about, Coach. But beforehand, let's take you back in the time machine. 1994, Pensacola, Florida. Why and how do you find your way at LSU?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I tell people I'm 47 years old, and I've really been in college football for 47 years. So this is really it's a family business. It's kind of all I know. I grew up a college coach's kid, bouncing around, moving everywhere. Grew up mostly in Alabama. My dad was, when I was born, he was coaching some high schools in Alabama, then got into college, and he was the head coach at Livingston University, which is now West Alabama, for a long time. And we just bounced around. And then he took a step away from college football before my senior year because he never got to see me play. So he actually went back and coached high school football for a few years to coach me, because the best way to see me play was to coach me. So that was a pretty neat deal. So he was the defense coordinator at Austin Peay in Tennessee. And then he took a high school job there in Pensacola, and we moved down there to finish out my high school career. And, when I left high school, I knew I wanted to play college football. I wasn't very big. I wasn't very fast, and, average strength, I guess. So there wasn't a lot of a market for that 175-pound high school center that's biting ankles, So I kind of went through those debates of, do I go to a place like West Alabama, like Delta State, or maybe an NAIA school and try to put on some weight, play fullback, whatever, or do I try to do something bigger? My cousin, Sammy McCorkle, at the time was playing at the University of Florida and was doing some really good things in the special teams world. And, I kind of grew up, looking up to him. He's the head coach at Dartmouth now, actually, in the Ivy League. And, I kind of thought, shoot, if he can do it, I can do it. So I was always a pretty decent long snapper. So found my way to LSU as a walk-on long snapper. And, always figured if it didn't work, and I could always go back to one of those places and try to play, fullback, linebacker, tight end, whatever, maybe if I gained a little weight, but it worked out. I was able to be a long snapper there for 4 years, did it every game I was there, and I got my school paid for. So it was a great experience. And that kind of segued me into coaching from there, and took off, and been at, I guess, 9 different colleges now, and Belhaven's the most recent.
Now, I got to ask you, what's game day like? What's game day like in Death Valley?
Yeah, It's life-changing. It's one of those things that, ever since I've been there, people have always asked me that question who've never seen it. You really just kind of have to see it and experience it. You see it on TV and you hear the stories, but until you get in there and those lights are on a Saturday night and that humid fog starts rolling in and that band starts playing, it's life-changing. And there's a lot of good college football out there in the world. There's a lot of places. Yes, I'm biased. I've been in every stadium in the SEC, and I've been in a lot of ACC stadiums. I mean, Penn State's hard to beat up in your neck of the woods. Happy Valley's a special, special place, but there's nothing like a Saturday night in Death Valley. There's no doubt. And it's life-changing.
So, Coach, walk us through, how do you, after the 4 years, why the choice to stay at your alma mater and take that first year as a GA?
Well, the coaches that I played for were really, really good to me. Jared Denardo was my head coach, and our offensive line coach was a guy named Hal Hunter, who's now with the Houston Texans. And he kind of took me under his wing. I think he saw a little bit of himself in me. Maybe he was a coach's kid who kind of had to find his way, and he played at Northwestern up in Chicago there, and he was a long snapper too. And he kind of took me in and really took care of me. And then the last 2 or 3 years I was there, I was kind of a GA as a player, because once you're done long snapping, there's not a lot for you to do.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time in the O-line meeting room and, helping him run drills. And actually, when he would go recruiting, when we'd be eligible for a bowl, kind of before it was declared, they'd have some recruiting time. You would have some practices with your younger players, your scout team, freshmen or whatever. And I would actually coach the offensive line when he'd go recruiting. So they really helped me get my career started, and it was easy to stay there with those guys. And I owe, Coach Denardo and Coach Hunter a lot for really helping get me started and get my feet wet and teach me the business.
Now, after that 99 season, why was it time to, obviously I know how the GA game works, so you only got 2 seasons really. Why was it time to move on after that first season?
Well, as happens in college football, you get fired. So Coach Denardo, our head coach, got fired after that season. And, he doesn't get the credit I think that he deserves at LSU. Before we went there, before my freshman year, LSU actually had 6 straight losing seasons, which now is hard for people to even fathom.
Yeah.
And then he came in there from Vanderbilt, and the first thing we did was we won 3 bowl games in a row for the first time in school history. And we won 10 games one year. That had only happened 5 times in school history. Now at LSU, that happens every year. That's commonplace. So we had a lot of success really early. Some things, situations happened, whatever. We fell off a little bit, and they made a change. And that's actually when Nick Saban came in. So I was a GA there with him for a month or 2, I guess. And then my father actually at the time got back into college coaching, got the head coaching job at the University of Tennessee at Martin. And, at that day and time, there weren't all the analysts and the quality control guys. You kind of were a GA, then you looked for that good Division II FCS job. Well, my dad becomes a head coach at an FCS school. Well, sure, that'd be great. What better way to really get started than with your dad on staff? And my cousin, who I mentioned a minute ago, who's the head coach at Dartmouth now, he was actually on the staff with us. So we had 3 Coach McCorkles on the same staff. And, I knew that opportunity would never come along again to coach with those 2 guys. And that was a pretty special time for our family.
Now, Coach, you've talked a lot so far about the connection with sports through your family. Did that, obviously that influenced your choice in what you were going to do as a career, but does it make it a little bit more special that you have these opportunities to coach with your dad and you can pick up the phone, call the cousin? I gotta say, Thanksgiving dinners and whatnot got to be real interesting at your table.
Yeah, it's our family business. There's the 3 of us. Then we actually have another cousin who's older. He's in his 80s now, named George Litton, and he was a college football coach for a career. He was actually the first ever head coach at Gardner-Webb when they started that program there, and he was at Lees McRae and in the Carolina areas there for a lot of years. So there's like four college coaches in our family. So that's kind of who we are. It's the family business, and I don't know what else we would really talk about, but we talk ball a good bit.
Oh, it's not, at least it's not politics and religion, right? It's just ball.
That's right. So we can talk those things too if you need to, but that's a different podcast. So,
so Coach, after is it 3 seasons at Tennessee Martin, and then you make the move to the School of the South, Swansea.
That's right. Yeah.
And now, are they a Division III school at that point, or are they going through that process?
Okay. Yeah. We were there at Tennessee Martin, and again, things happen. Our staff's let go, whatever. So 2 jobs, 2 firings to get started. I was off to a pretty good start there, and then went to Swanee, the University of the South, for a couple of years. And yeah, it was Division III. And I think at the time I kind of went there to leave there because I really didn't know or understand what Division III was. I didn't take time. I wasn't mature enough at the time to really appreciate that school and everything that it is and the history of it. But Sewanee is a really, really unique place. It's an absolutely beautiful place. Sits up on the mountain, and game day is really neat. You know, they come marching in with the bagpipes and playing the kilts with their steins and all that stuff. And that's a pretty neat experience. So I think I was probably so young and career driven at the time. I was just in a hurry to get out of there and didn't take the time to stop and enjoy the mountain.
Now, so you're there for, it's one season, two seasons.
I was there 2 seasons. Yeah.
And then
03, 04.
And then the next, there's a trend in your resume that starts popping up here. This is the first stop.
Right.
You make your way to Liberty in 05. Why was Liberty where you felt right? And what did you learn from that experience?
Well, when you're 27, 28, you get a chance to go from Division III to FCS football, you're going to do it. So that was a pretty good career move there. And I liked everything that Liberty stood for. There's a lot of good things that happen there, regardless of what the media portrays it to be sometimes. A lot of good happens there. So I thought that was a neat opportunity for me and my family. So I took the offensive line job there, and we went 1-10, which is hard to imagine at Liberty now because they're really rolling.
Yeah.
And got fired the first year. I was there under Ken Karcher, who's a good man, good football coach. I learned a lot of football from him. I learned a lot from him in a lot of areas. But we got fired, and so I was really only there about 4 months, really struggled to find a job in coaching after that. So my wife and kids were there and went through the summer, couldn't find anything. And then this is a wild story. This is kind of what you're asking probably is why I ended up at Liberty 3 different times. So I took a restricted earnings job at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, coaching the tight ends. I knew it was only for a season, but it was going to keep me in. So my family actually stayed in Lynchburg. As soon as the season was over at Chattanooga, which was a great experience. I love Chattanooga. It's a great city. Came right back to Lynchburg, started looking for a job again. The strength coach at Liberty and I are really good friends. And so while I was back in town looking for a job, I'd go work out with him. Bill Gillespie, you ought to look him up sometime. He actually, for a while, had the biggest bench press in the history of the world in any division. He bench pressed 1,138 pounds at 60 years old. So he's a freak show. You can look him up. That's a whole other podcast. But he and I were close, and I'd go work out with him. And the new head coach there who replaced us was the guy named Danny Rocco. And they had an opening in the weight room. And Bill just asked Coach Rocco, he's like, hey, look, I know this guy's a football coach, but I like him. I trust him. I know you fired him a year ago. And when Coach Rocco actually let me go, he came in to take over, and he brought me in his office. He's like, look, we're not going to keep you, whatever. I really respected and appreciated how he went about that process. And I'm like, you know what? This guy's sitting here firing me, but I really like him. You know, like he's handling this right. He's being a professional, you know. So I respected what they were doing. They kind of got it turned around there pretty quick. So the strength coach, Coach Gillespie, asked Coach Rocco, could he hire me, as a part-time strength coach just to keep me in the profession while I continue to look. And he said, sure, you can do that. So I went and talked to Coach Rocco and is like, look, I may be gone in a month if I find something. He's like, well, I fired you. You can fire me. And, just keep food on your kids' table and help our strength coach out. Well, then come to find out, they actually had a spot for an extra on-the-field coach. So I was kind of part-time strength coach, part-time assistant offensive line coach with Scott Wackenheim, who later went on to be the head coach at VMI and is a dear friend of mine. So I actually ended up being the assistant to the guy who took my job. And but I wasn't making much money, so I went through that season. We won a conference championship, had a really good team, and it was a great experience. And I learned a lot from Coach Rocco, and I just fell in love with that staff and the way they operated, the way they did things. But I had to feed the kids, right? So that's when I got the Tennessee Tech offensive line job. So that was my second stint at Liberty. And this is a wild story. This goes round and round. You got to keep up here, Carlo. But So I thought I'd kind of washed my hands of Liberty. It's like, all right, I was there 2 stints. It was a good experience. Now it's time to go do my thing at Tennessee Tech. So I did, and I worked for Watson Brown there, Mac Brown's brother. A lot of people know who Watson Brown is. And that was a good experience. We didn't have a great team, but I learned a lot there. I think I became a better coach there. I learned to be a good note taker there, learned to be more detailed there. So every stop, you're going to learn something. Yeah. And then after a year, as I said, I thought I'd been at Liberty twice, thought I'd wash my hands of it. Well, Scott Wackenheim calls and he's like, hey, look, I'm fixing to go take a job with the Washington Redskins. So they're going to need an offensive line coach at Liberty. Would you want to come back a third time? And I said, yeah, man, just tell me when to come, because I respected Coach Rocco and that staff so much. I saw what they were building there. So I went back for the third time. So I was there 05, 07, And then I stayed 9, 10, 11. So I was there 5 years total over 3 stints. And, we won 4 conference championships while I was there over that time. And it was a wonderful experience. We really were kind of kickstarting what people know Liberty football to be as today. We built the stadium while we were there. We built some nice facilities. We won a lot of games. So that was a pretty fun deal. And it was fun to be a part of that rebuilding process. And then from there, Coach Rocco left to go to the University of Richmond. One of the issues at Liberty at the time was we didn't have an automatic bid to the playoffs, and we had really good teams. We were winning 8, 10 games a year, couldn't get in the playoffs. So we felt like if we could go to Richmond, that might could put us over that hump. Richmond had kind of fallen on hard times too. They were 3-8 the year before we got there. And then that first year we went 8-3 and won the conference. So we turned that one around pretty quick too.
Yeah.
We were there for 5 years and had a really good run. Richmond was a really fun experience for me. Made some lifetime friends. Met my wife there. My wife was a field hockey coach at Richmond when I was there. And that was pretty special deal. And then Coach Rocco left again to go to the University of Delaware. And so we were there 1 year, turned that program around too. They were 4-7 before we got there. We were 7-4. So 3 times I was a part of a staff with Coach Rocco and crew that helped reignite or turn programs around. My kids had moved with their mother to Baton Rouge, back to Baton Rouge, where she was from. I was remarried at the time. Life takes a lot of twists and turns. Coaching's a rough business. And so I knew that I wanted to get back south, be closer to my kids. Delaware to Louisiana is a long way away, and I wanted to be the best dad that God could make me to be. And I knew I couldn't do that far away. So I took a step out in faith, and me and my wife took the Belhaven job. I never dreamed in my wildest dreams of being a Division III head coach. But it's been a blessing. And that's how we got to Belhaven. So I really took out, kind of left chasing that big time dream and felt like I was really close, at Richmond, Delaware, some of those places to landing that next job, maybe being in the ACC or whatever. But being a good dad outweighed that. And so that's why I made the move back south to Jackson, Mississippi, and been here 6 years now.
Now, Coach, there was
keep up with all that? That was a lot.
I kept up with all of it. I'm hoping that the people that are watching kept up with all of it, because that story.
Take notes on that one.
There was some peaks and valleys to that story.
No doubt.
Now, here's something I noticed when I was doing my research for today's interview. Not only did you go to 3 programs where you were part of a quick turnaround, but specifically the position you were coaching were almost dominant, if not almost. They were dominant for the respective seasons. Liberty in 11, Richmond in 12 through 16, and then Delaware in 17. So, and you answered why Belhaven, but you answered what the move was behind it. But to become the 7th head coach in Belhaven history, why was Belhaven the right spot for you to say, yep, this is where we're starting the head coaching career, and we're gonna do some things with this program?
A lot of reasons. I knew I wanted to be a head coach. As I mentioned, my dad was a college head coach, and I always kind of saw myself running the company. And it's not for everybody, but I wanted to try that. I wanted to, having been a part of 3 programs that we were able to turn around as an assistant, I wanted to kind of see if I could take that same model and do it myself. It was like, hey, do I have what it takes to do that? So it was a challenge to myself. My time at Liberty was very valuable to me spiritually and how I view being a Christian coach, because that's what I am. I'm a Christian first and a coach second. And Belhaven offered that same opportunity. I feel like that being in Christian education, I can actually coach my kids harder than I could at State U. I get after my kids pretty good, but they know it's coming from a different place. They know it's rooted in love. So that's pretty cool. So it gave me an opportunity to get back in that. It gave me an opportunity to get back south. I know you're up there in Pittsburgh around the Whippeal and snow and the Steelers, and I love that. I spent a lot of time in that part of the world too. My wife's a Pennsylvania girl, but being at Delaware, I'll be honest with you, I needed some sunshine and sweet tea.
I understand.
So Southern football is a real thing too. You alluded to it a minute ago. I wanted to get back around that. So chance to be a head coach, chance to get back in Christian education, chance to be back south. And an opportunity to see if I could turn a program around from the seat at the end of the table instead of an assistant. All those things were pretty appealing to me.
Now, Coach, you touched on it with Liberty. One of the struggles was that there wasn't an automatic bid. Now I'm still learning how the conference is. Actually, we're going to have somebody on week after next to explain kind of how the pools go and how people get their into the playoffs and whatnot. But surprisingly, with football being predominant and dominant in the South, there's not as many D3 schools. Does that affect what you guys have to do when you're scheduling in those non-conference games to try to get yourself strength of schedule wise in, and what all goes into that for on your side?
Yeah, I think scheduling non-conference games in Division III is about as hardest thing you have to do as a Division III head coach, because it's the largest division by far with the fewest amount of games. So the math doesn't really work sometimes. So here at Belhaven, we're pretty fortunate that Millsaps is literally across the street from us. Like if I turn my head to the left and look out my office window here, I can see their lights. They're that close to us. I mean, they're truly across the street, and that's a big rivalry. It's a lot of fun. So we're going to play them the first game every year, but they're not in our conference, so that automatically gives us one. So really, I only have to go find one more, and you would be amazed how hard it is to find that one game. I think last year, I think there's 240, however many Division III schools. I sent out over 200 emails and phone calls to find one game, and it took forever. And finally, we were able to land Lyon, who was transitioning from NAI to Division III. So the strength of schedule thing is real. You want to try to schedule people that bolster your strength of schedule, but you better just find a game.
Yeah.
And I think as much good as there is that comes from Division III football, I think only having 10 games and no red shirt, which that's a different conversation, is a little bit hypocritical by the NCAA, if I'm just brutally honest, because if we're saying that Division III is created for kids that love playing the game and just want an opportunity, why are we limiting opportunities?
Absolutely.
So let's play more games, and then that non-conference scheduling all of a sudden becomes a whole lot easier because more people are looking for more games. Same thing with the playoffs. Add one more game. Add one more game. You got that many more people in, and you're only adding 1 week. One game only adds 1 week. So I think there's a lot there that we can do better in Division III football and Division III athletics if it truly is what we say it's about.
Now,
I could go on that one for a long time.
Well, and those discussions are happening, right? There is a discussion about expanding the playoff system. There was a discussion where I think Division I and Division II did something with the clock, where Division III, the coaches went, "Hey, this doesn't affect us like it does them. Why are we doing that?" Coach, what is your and through your career, how has all of your stops shaped what your philosophy is at Belhaven?
Yeah, good question. Everywhere you go and everybody that you interact with shapes you in one form or another. I think I've worked for 9 head coaches, maybe 10 at 9 schools, I think is what it is. I've learned something from every one of those head coaches that I've worked for. I've learned something from pretty much every assistant coach that I've worked with. And a lot of those things go into how we run our program. I've stolen bits and pieces from all of them, but there's also at the same time things that from some of those head coaches I work for that I know I'll never do. Like I worked for Coach X. I'm like, well, I'm never doing that if I'm a head coach, So, learning is not necessarily something you implement. It's something you learn not to do too. But I did spend, 10 years, as I mentioned, with Coach Rocco on his staff. So being at 3 schools over the course of 10 years, that's a lot of time invested in a process and a system and a set of values and how to coach and play the game. So I think anybody that was on our staff or a player during that time period would come to Belhaven right now and say, "Oh yeah, that sounds very familiar." We just kind of joke sometimes, Coach Rocco, you say, "Well, the system works. It works. It's a good setup." Obviously, I've adapted it now over 6 years to make it my own. And every place that you go, you have to adapt to the school setup because everywhere is different with facilities or class schedules or whatever, so you have to kind of tailor it to where you are, but the core of it does come from him from an organizational standpoint. And it's been good for us. Our staff's bought into it. The calendar is very real for us. We try to be highly organized and I want my guys to come in every day and know exactly what to expect when they show up. I don't ever want them to come in and say, "Well, how's coach going to be today?" or "What kind of mood's he in?" or "What's the schedule going to be?" The schedule's set, and if I have to change the schedule, I'm going to tell you as far in advance as I need to, and I'm going to apologize for it because everybody has wives and families, and things they have to do. This is football. A college football coach, it's not a job, it's a calling. But at the same time, you do have life outside of it that you have to manage. So I want to give people the opportunity to do that. So, being organized and detailed, to me, I feel like I get a better product from my players and my coaches if they know what's going on.
Now, Coach, I want to take a minute and talk about let's talk about your program before we get into what's going on this season. Talk to us about the core values and whatnot to be one of your players.
Yeah. So when we recruit our guys, we tell them we're really looking only for two things. Do you want to get a degree and do you love football?
Mm-hmm.
If those two things match up, this will be a good place for you. But if you're a guy who has a whole lot of outside interest or agendas, this place isn't going to work for you, because what we do is hard, and when we recruit kids, I'm probably sometimes brutally honest with them to a fault. Like I'll tell kids, like, if you decide to come play at Belhaven, it's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done in your life to date. If not, I'm letting you down. I'm letting your parents down, because your parents spent 17 years growing you into the man they want you to be. Now they're entrusted me to take you the next 4 years. I'm not going to let your parents down. I'm a parent myself. I want somebody to buy in and invest in my kids when I send them off to do something. And winning's hard. We want to win football games here. We make no bones about that. And so the core values, we start with those two things. Do you love football and do you want to get a degree? Mm-hmm. We talk a lot here about having a 5-star culture. Culture is a buzzword that coaches use everywhere. Everybody talks about culture. I think one of the things that always bothers me when I hear coaches talk culture is they say, well, our culture wasn't set, or now our culture's set, so we can do this. Your culture is never set. Your culture is like the stock market, man. That thing's fluid. So like every kid that comes onto my roster, is the day he enters my roster, our culture just changed, because he brings unique gifts and personalities and flaws. Every time a kid leaves my roster, my culture changes again, sometimes for the good, sometimes for worse. Every time a coach comes or goes, my culture changes. So the idea is not to have a set culture, because that's not realistic. It's to have a strong culture that can withstand, so we don't have a lot of rules in our program, but we do have a lot of standards, and our standards are really high. We have expectations. There's a way that a Belhaven Blazer football player carries himself and works. But to that culture, if you talk about core principles, we talk about a 5-star culture a lot. If you'll remember a few years ago, the running back from Iowa State, when they upset Texas, he made the comment that 5-star culture just beat 5-star talent. And that was a pretty powerful statement when he said that. And a lot of our kids here kind of bought into that, and they started echoing 5-star culture. Well, we always had, our 4 pillars of success that we talked about, like a lot of people had, character, unity, accountability, and trust. Mm-hmm. Well, that was 4, which we're like, okay, if we want to have a 5-star culture, let's add the 5th, and the 5th is toughness. So the 5 stars for us are character, trust, accountability, unity, and toughness. Now, toughness to me that's a stickler for me. I'm big on the toughness piece, because I don't think it's always what people think it is. And I tell my guys, sometimes the guy in a white collar shirt with a tie sitting behind his computer all day is a whole lot tougher than the guy out running the streets, doing whatever, picking fights, because he's made a decision. Tough guy is a mature guy. Tough guy is a smart guy. Anybody can go be a bum on the streets and do whatever, those things are easy. It's easy to go be a drug dealer or a criminal, or you name, or flunk out of school. It's easy not to go to class, but it takes toughness to get up in the morning, put your feet on the floor, stay away from the snooze button, go to class, take good notes, sit up straight, and then come to football practice on time, ready to go. Those things take toughness, Mm-hmm. Now we want them to be, if they get in a street fight, I want them to win, but sometimes we get misconstrued into what toughness really is and really is not. And we try to preach those things to our guys. And they've kind of bought into it. And I think we have not a set culture, but a strong culture that's really helped us be successful.
When, building off of last year's just smash mouth football from the highlights that I saw, 7-1 overall this year, 5-1 in the conference. That puts you second in the USA South, with 2 very important games coming up here this week and then the following week. Yep. Where are you guys at right now? Obviously we're at the nitty-gritty part of the season. How are you feeling? How's the team feeling? And what should we be expecting for the rest of the season?
Yeah, we're in a good spot because, we're 5-1. There's another team that's undefeated that will play in 2 weeks. But at the end of the day, we control our own destiny. If we win these next two games, we win a conference championship, we get the automatic bid.
Yes.
Belhaven's been playing football for 26 years now. They've never won an outright conference championship. We've never been to the postseason. So there's a lot of things ahead of us to play for. Last year we went 8-2 and missed out. That was the best season in school history. The year before that we went 7-3 and missed out. That was the best season in school history. So to go 7, 8, 9 in win totals would be pretty stinking cool for our seniors, and to cap it off with a conference championship and a trip to the postseason would be a pretty special deal. So our guys, we're sitting at 7-0. Well, we got beat this past week in overtime by a really, really good Maryville football team. And I give them credit. They showed up and they beat us, and they did a nice job. We were able to get it to overtime and couldn't finish it off. So kudos to Coach Fox and crew. A lot of respect for them. But we've got 2 games ahead that will determine what happens. And we will be highly disappointed if we do anything less than find ourselves playing in 3 weeks and not staying at home.
Well, and with that being said, give us a Saturday down south. What's the atmosphere like because we know what you told us with Division I at LSU, there's no better feeling, but what's the atmosphere like for you on a Saturday for the people that are up here getting ready for the snow to start?
Yeah, well, it's so waiting on the snow to start. So yesterday it was 48 degrees and we almost called out the National Guard. So we're struggling down here when it gets below 50. But no, it's a little cool and breezy down here right now, but it's going to be back in the 80s next week. So that'll feel more like right. But game day at Belhaven is a pretty special place. When we came here 6 years ago, I'll be honest with you, it was a snooze fest, man. It was like I kind of joked, there was a lot of people dressed up like bleachers. There's a lot of empty seats there. And, I've actually got a picture in my office on my laptop here of homecoming in 2018, my first year here. And there's probably 200 people in the stands. There's nobody there. It's in the second quarter when the crowd's usually the biggest.
Yeah.
We were getting beat by Hardin-Simmons 63-7. It was a rough day. And this is a true story. When I first came to Belhaven, they picked homecoming based on when the school play opened up in the fall, not on the football game. Now, if you come to homecoming, it's standing room only. And I've got a side-by-side picture of the 2 homecomings, the one from last year and the one from our first year, where it's empty and there's nobody there and we're getting killed. And then last year, it is wall-to-wall people. Our stadium's called the Bowl. It sits down in a bowl, so there's a berm around the end zone, and it's absolutely packed with people, and there's smoke and tents. One of my assistant coaches, Carson Stewart, who's awesome. He's been here the whole time with me, and he's as loyal and hard a worker as there could be. He's gotten to a habit now where he counts the tents on game day. And the first year there was maybe 2, and now we're, he's like, we got 38 tents today, and so it's pretty cool deal to see how the atmosphere here has grown. It's a family friendly. Our school is a neighborhood, so a lot of the families come out and sit on the hillside and watch the game and tailgate, and it's turned into a pretty special deal. And it's something to do on a Jackson, Mississippi on a Saturday afternoon.
Well, Coach, we're at that point where I'm gonna start throwing you those curveball questions, but I want to say. When this episode comes out, it will be after that second week. So I'm hoping that on that third week, we're picking you on our board during our playoff predictions. But starting off with our random 5 questions. Okay. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
In the world, oh boy. I don't want to live outside the United States. This is the greatest place God ever put on this planet. So I'm going to stay in the United States, and I'm going to stay in the deep South somewhere because I like the warm weather. I like the food. I've lived in 8 states, and they're all uniquely different. I can't say which one I like the best. South Louisiana is very special to me for a lot of reasons. So I would do that. But at the same time, I'm a pretty big fan of that Smoky Mountain area, the East Tennessee. I guess, spend that time at Liberty, and our family kind of originated out of that area. Those mountains are pretty special too. So I'm probably more of a mountain guy than a beach guy, but I like the beach. But I'm going to be in the deep South, and I'm going to be eating good food.
What's the most important lesson that you've learned over your career?
To love the kids. To love the kids. Truly to love the kids. I tell people all the time that, you come in and you become a head coach and you have all these goals and dreams and visions and things like that. And then you're planning how you're going to do it. But the longer I do it, I got 2 jobs. I got to win football games and I got to love the kids. And those things actually go hand in hand. If I love them well, they're going to win football games. So we both kind of get what we want, and as I mentioned a minute ago, being a college football coach is not a job, it's a calling, and it's not for everybody. So it's a lifestyle. And I think your philosophies and your thoughts are always changing, but at the end of the day, it's about the kids.
If you weren't, and I think this is going to be the toughest question I ask you all episode, if you weren't coaching, what would you be doing and why?
Good question. I probably would have gone into the military, to be honest with you. When I was a kid, I was, fascinated with that lifestyle and all the things that come with it. As mentioned a minute ago, we live in the greatest country God ever put on the face of the earth. I believe that to my core. I'm a firm believer in American exceptionalism. I'm all about it. And I think a lot of people sacrificed a lot for us to have the things that we were blessed to have here. And as I mentioned, when I was a kid, those are things that I was always kind of interested in. I remember one time when I was a kid, I had my mom for Christmas get me Army and Navy sweatshirts. I thought I wanted to go to one of those schools. I wasn't near smart enough to get in. As I got older, I figured out that wasn't for me. But I kind of think as I was in high school, I knew I wanted to play college football. So it was either college football or the military, probably. Probably didn't express that as much when I got to high school, but always have a lot of respect for that. And I think it probably fits my personality and my way of life. And I like structure. So, yeah.
Coach, what's the best compliment you've ever received?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. That's a great question. I mentioned a minute ago that I took the Belhaven job to be a better dad. So anytime somebody says you're a good dad, that means a lot, because I definitely want to leave something better when my time here is gone, for sure. And hopefully my kids can carry that on and know that everything I do is for them, that I love them, and want to raise them up in a godly manner. And so anytime somebody compliments me on being a good dad, it means a lot, because I think I fail in that area all the time. So if somebody recognizes you doing well, I'll take it.
And then the other side of compliments, what's the best insult you've ever received?
Oh, I've got a lot, man. You're in this profession. You're going to receive them. You were asking me a minute ago about Tiger Stadium and living in that world and all that. I got a few insults while I was there. There's no doubt about that. And I remember when I was a GA, we weren't doing very good before our head coach got fired, as I mentioned, and I was in the press box with our offensive coordinator, and we're at home, and to go to the press box, you had to come out of the tunnel around the edge of the stadium and then back underneath to go up the elevator. And Bob McConnell was our offensive coordinator at the time. He passed away a year or so ago, and he's just a great man, and he was a dear friend and mentor. And we're getting ready to go up the tunnel, and we're getting beat by the University of Houston, of all people, at halftime. And one of those rowdy Cajuns had a big gulp of bourbon and Coke, and he just doused us. And he's like, hey, it was the second to last game of the year, I guess. He's like, 6 more quarters, you SOBs, and you're out of here. So we get on the elevator. We're sticky. We're covered in bourbon and Coke. And I'll never forget, Coach McConnell looks at me as a young coach, and he just kind of chuckles. He's like, just another day at the office. And but no, I've got plenty of insults in my day. If you do this long enough, you're going to get a bunch of them. But that was you asked earlier, that was a good Tiger Stadium story for you, that you got to have thick skin in this business.
I imagine so. And then, so my last question, I've asked every coach this, it's kind of worded kind of funky, but was there a question that you were expecting me to ask you? And if so, how would you have answered it?
Oh my gosh. That's a great question. No, I don't know that I was expecting or not expecting anything. I just appreciate you taking time to help promote our brand of football, so I want to thank you for that and the opportunity. And, I appreciate that. And I appreciate where you're coming from in that part of the world. Some great football in Pennsylvania, man. There's no doubt. I mentioned Coach Rocco a while ago. He was a Pittsburgh area guy. We had a guy on our staff named Manny Rojas, who was from the Pittsburgh area, big whippy old guy. He's the defense coordinator at Delaware now. And my wife is actually from Allentown. She's a good Italian girl from up that way. So I know all about Pennsylvania football. So, and there's a lot of good Division III football up there. I think you guys have got 36, 38 Division III teams in Pennsylvania.
I mean, I was just having the conversation with Moravian's head coaches that, when you go across Pennsylvania, it's kind of, you go up 79, you're talking about the PAC. When you get to the middle of the state, you're talking between the Landmark and the Centennial. And then you get to the other side, which is, you got the MAC and the conferences that are out there. It's just the amount of schools that are up here is mind-blowing. But thank you very much for the kind words. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you
we're in
taking
Mississippi.
the time.
We have two. So you putting the national spotlight on it. I really appreciate you doing that.
Well, and listen, I appreciate you taking the time here as we're down to the final 2 weeks of the season. So I know time is very valuable. So I want to say thank you. And for those of you that listen, thank you for checking out this week's episode. You know what comes next. We'll send it over to Serenity Brown in overtime, where we make our picks, and hopefully I don't embarrass myself, because I don't think I could live with my fiance for a year if she beats me in picking football games. So, Coach, thank you again for taking the time to join us, and we will be right back.
Thanks a lot.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is Overtime with Serenity Brown. That's Serenity Brown. Rough couple weeks here in the picking angle. We'll get to that. We just finished with Coach McCorkle of Belhaven. They are our game of the week. A lot riding on this game for Belhaven. They'll play Brevard. It's the first time. It will be the second time the two teams will meet in their history. Last year, 2022, Belhaven won that game 20-7 at Brevard. So you would assume Brevard's probably looking for a little come spoil the chance for Belhaven to make it into the big dance. Yeah, as Coach said, it's kind of all in their hands now. They took care of business last week. They're rolling in this week. They got a home game. They get a chance. You win, you're in. You don't, maybe a bowl game. So, for those of you that are watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or watching on Spotify, really appreciate you. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Don't forget, we are still running our fundraiser donation campaign for the whole month of November. Please, any little bit that you can, if you're willing and able, please donate. And make sure you check out our social medias. It's Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, and Facebook. The only one that's different is the Instagram page. That is dingo_talk. Going into this week, DB sits at 81-19. I'm sitting at 75-25. And my friend to my right, my lovely fiance, is sitting at 71-29. So not out of it yet. This week's going to be important. And that's why you all are here, is for the picks. So let's jump right into them. Case at Carnegie Mellon. Carnegie Mellon is the first team out of the top 25. A win would probably get them in as an at-large. So two PAC teams could be making the tournament. You picked?
Yes.
DB and I took Carnegie Mellon. Battle of the Smart Schools next up. Actually, that's a battle of smart schools. This is a battle of smart schools as well. WPI versus MIT. You took?
WPI.
And DB and I took MIT. Why did you take WPI? I'm just curious.
I just went with it.
All right. What'd you call this game next up?
This next game is the game of funny names.
DePaul, who's also they're the second team just out of the top 25, versus at Wabash. DB and I took DePaul.
I took Wabash.
The next one up is Anderson at Manchester. I took Anderson. You two took
Manchester, yeah.
Probably the best game on our board, minus our game of the week. Number 15, Cortland, travels to Ithaca, number 14. Cortland already locked up their ticket. They punched their ticket to the dance because they won the Empire 8. But ranked behind Ithaca. Now, this is rivalry week here in Division 3. So, you know, it's interesting. You picked.
Ithaca.
DB picked.
Ithaca.
I picked Cortland. I'm riding with the Red Dragons. I think that this is, they had their loss. They are the Cortland Red Dragons. How cool is that?
Sick.
Yeah. Next up, we're learning things. We're teaching things. It's great. Whitworth at number 8, Linfield, and we all took.
We all took
Linfield. Next up, number 19, Hardin Simmons at ETBU. You had a very interesting explanation for why you picked Hardin Simmons. DB and I also took Hardin Simmons. You want to share why?
So the last time I picked I think the last time ETB was
You,
on the
twice.
board.
You picked them twice, and both times
And both times they ran around and screwed me over. So I'm
You're not picking them
no
anymore.
longer picking them. We got a beef going on.
Number 16 Alma and I really apologize if I butcher this. Hopefully we can get their coach on and he can educate me on how this is pronounced. Albion?
Alboin?
Alboin? It doesn't matter. We all picked Alma. So
Yeah.
next up, RPI, and they are traveling to friend of the show, Union. Serenity Brown picked.
RPI.
And why?
Because the last time they were on the board,
You were the only one that picked them.
I was the only one that picked them, and they did me a solid and won. So we run in with them.
DB and I took Union. And our game of the week, Belhaven at Brevard at Belhaven, sorry.
Yeah.
And I think this is the first time unanimously that we all picked the team.
Team of the week.
We're all riding with the Blazers of Belhaven. Hoping they punch that ticket to the playoffs. It was really a great opportunity to talk to them. They're the second coach from that USA South. We had Coach Turk on earlier on this season. But we all took Belhaven. And, going into the playoffs, this is a make or break week for you, baby. It's a make or break week. I've come to terms with the fact that I just have to hold on to...
I probably screwed the pooch 3 weeks in a row.
I have come to terms with the fact that DB got me in a couple weeks where his picks were better than mine. But as long as we are going to roll into season 4 and I did not lose to you, so we can roll into another year.
So we still got next year.
That's right.
We'll do better.
So, with that being said, is there anything else you want to add? Anything that's directly on your mind right now about D3 or football or anything like that? Obviously, can I give them a little sneak peek of what we're planning to do with this? So the overtime, obviously, we're going to run through the season here. Once we get through the playoffs for the month of November into December, then we're going to take our break as we always do, and then when we come back for season 4. We're kind of going to take the off season. Serenity's going to look up different things, and based off of the games we've watched and whatnot, she's going to ask some questions so that she can better prepare herself.
We're going to learn football.
And then, right, the goal is next season we're going to see, do we get a better record?
Do we get an improvement?
Do
I retain any information?
So stick with us, folks, because we're going to, if we don't educate one other person about football, we're going to educate this one, or we're going to attempt to. So, with that being said, Coach McCorkle, thank you for joining us, especially this late in the season. Best of luck this week to all the teams that are playing. There's 5 spots left. 28 teams get an automatic bid from their conference championship. There's 5 at-large bids. It's going to be one hell of a weekend. We'll see you next week, Chuckleheads.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Dingo Talk. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. For more info and to contact the show, you can find us on Twitter @DingoTalk.